Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Blades and Banter podcast. I'm your host, Nolan Carney, and I'm joined once again by my two lovely, lovely, lovely people, Clayton Gates and Alexa Leach. Guys, this episode might have been scheduled to be filmed on Thursday, Friday. It might be Monday at 7:50 in the morning or 7:50 in the evening, but we are talking about Russia and how are you two?
We're good. It was a long weekend here in Canada. I got a really bad sunburn, so sorry for the delay. But you know
I was
what?
at a
Like,
wedding.
yeah,
I
We were
know
all
Clayton,
busy.
life
guys,
happens.
Clayton posted this is like wedding fit on his private story. I swiped up, I said, okay, 8. Like
So good.
Yes.
Clayton was primed and ready for that wedding, and
Thank
Mhm.
Alexa
you.
was primed and ready for some aloe.
Yes.
No, yeah, she needs it bad.
So, and I was just primed at home on my couch watching college softball all weekend. So,
That so
we all had
fascinates me.
some things
I'm
going
still trying
on.
to like wrap my head around you being a softball fan
Yes.
because I haven't fully like
People
processed
like
that
other
yet.
sports. It's okay. I have
I
tennis coming
do.
up too.
I love
So,
tennis.
okay.
But
All
speaking of
right.
our favorite sport,
Speaking of our favorite sport,
this week, guys, Russia announced, or ISU announced, all of the neutral athletes being selected. What do we think? We had that big announcement.
It was a random Wednesday.
It was
What
just
a
like a
random ass
it was like a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Sorry. Or
I was like,
like
I woke up and I was like, oh, my timeline's going a little bit crazy, but
Mm-hmm.
it's
it
great
didn't
to
feel
see that something
real.
happened.
Like seeing it so casually on the timeline, like, oh, this is
Yes.
what's happening by like anything goes. And I'm like, oh, is this okay? Like this is how we're starting today.
The
Um,
ISU is weird because sometimes they're like for a lot of their announcements, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. You don't really know when it's going to happen. Like our
No.
Grand Prix assignments might come out in 2 weeks. They might also come out like July 31st, like that one year where they took forever to come out.
Yes.
And you never know. And that's just the fun of it all.
they should do it like a Taylor Swift like album announcement. Like they should like do like
Like have all the Easter
teasers and
eggs,
say,
like
yeah,
as
they
they
should do
Yeah.
it just
build
like that.
up.
And so that they kind of like lead us on that way until we have an idea of when it's gonna come. But so yeah, what do y'all think about the athletes that were approved? So for Russia, we have Adelia Petrosian and Alina Gorbachova as the alleged alternate. For the men in
Mhm.
Russia, we have Pyotr Gumianik and Vladislav Dikiji, who
Yeah.
is the alleged alternate, and I have some thoughts about that for sure. I'm low-key team Vlad. And then for Belarusia, I'm probably gonna butcher this name,
I don't
Vasil
even know how to say it either.
Bakuski and Victoria Stefanova, which we have seen before in international competition. So expecting her to do well. What do y'all think about this?
I thought it was a pleasant surprise that we did not have the pairs or the dance team
Mm.
approved. And I was actually very proud of the ISU
Mhm.
and the IOC for doing the correct thing if they were following the guidelines to a T. I know there was some controversy surrounding whether Petrosian and Gumenik were approved, and I think we'll get into that later in the
Mhm.
episode, but I think there were more circumstances where I think it was very hard for the ISU and the IOC to prove that she was surrounded or was connected to doping,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that was 100% the case. So yeah, things to know kind of about this. They're calling them AIN individual or athletes. I'm trying to see if they're what it means exactly.
It's like individual athlete,
Individual
neutral
neutral
athlete,
athletes
athlete.
is
Yeah.
the abbreviation of what they are going for. So things to know. I thought that the ISU noted in their assessments that it was all on objective criteria. They looked at evidence that complied with the ISU's neutrality criteria and making sure that that was kind of in compliance with any public support that they saw with athletes. And they also noted that all of their decisions on the eligibility list were final and not
Mhm.
subject to an appeal, which would
We've
be
already seen.
we've already seen an appeal.
Or two.
But like
Or
it's Russia,
two.
so like isn't anybody surprised by that? No.
So these athletes, Galliamov and Bukin, or sorry, Misha and Galliamov
Mhm.
and Stepanova and Bukin both filed for an appeal, basically stating that they were neutral, that they were not in showing any public support of the war. So I want to know what your guys' take is on the appeal, because Alexa and we had a conversation with a peer, basically saying what are they going to appeal in this situation to CAS? What is their argument and how much of a legitimate case do they have?
Mhm.
So I want to know what your kind of initial thoughts were to that.
Well, does deleting an Instagram post count as being neutral again? Like, can you erase the digital footprint? I think, I think everyone's seen the pictures of these individuals at rallies hosted at the Kremlin by Putin, with military propaganda involved. It's not really a secret, so I don't know what they were expecting to happen.
I
Um,
think I think that goes into their ignorance as a
mhm,
federation and as a country, that
mhm,
they felt very empowered to submit athletes that they likely knew, because Moskvina had said in an interview that they kind of knew. They said that this was a possibility. They didn't know, but they said
mhm.
they understood that this was a possibility, that it could occur. And I think this kind of just highlights the importance, or not the importance, but the empowerment that Russia feels within the ISU and the
Mm,
IOC when they did submit these athletes that likely were to be denied.
right. Well, if you
Um,
think of the culture that they've, kind of established over a long period of time, they're used to getting by with things, letting
Mhm.
things slide,
Yeah.
things flying under the radar, and no one saying anything, slash people facilitating and allowing for things to happen. So it does make sense that those individuals in the Federation at large were hopeful.
and I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I just think from like a historical perspective, like we've seen, obviously, there's been such close ties with like Russia and I mean skating in general. Like you look at historically, like right from the get-go, and you think of like the
yes.
political pull for decades that the Russian Federation has had within the ISU. I do think that it's important to note this shift of leadership in the ISU. Now we have, the new ISU president, and I think that
He's
he's realized things. Like, yes, he's Korean, which I think
He's
also
Korean.
like even adds another layer of like if you think of like the lore in skating and like from a historical
mm,
perspective, like you think like 2014 Yuna Kim and like
Yeah.
obviously Russia, like you know what I mean? Like there's even just
retributions.
total like there's just like there's all these layers. And so I think that with Russia, their entire time, especially if you look at like probably the last like 10 or 15 years when there's really been such a surge in Russian dominance in figure skating. I would say maybe from like a singles, like it's obviously always been there in pairs and in ice dance, but like they everything that's gone wrong, whether it's been from doping or cheating or judging, like it's just always been a slap on the wrist. And they've just gotten by with always getting a slap on the wrist, even like you could say the most recent at the Olympics with them still getting the bronze medal in the team event.
And they're
And
always very martyrish, where they
mhm,
feel
Mm.
it isn't their fault at
they're
all,
always the
when
victim,
they're always the
always the
victim. It's a
victim.
victim case always.
Hmm.
Um, and bringing it back to the athletes that they've sent, so they've had time, and I've wondered, this is such a mistake on their part, because they've known
Hmm.
that they've had athletes that were going to likely not be approved from the neutrality statement from the end of the 22 Olympics. They knew that they should have known that there was a likely chance that they were going to be allowed back into the Olympics in Milan, probably with one spot, but they should have known. And they've had time to build up athletes in the Olympics that would have not been in the mainstream as much and would be more neutral and likely to be approved. Looking at the case of
like a Petrosian.
a Petrosian, a Kadieva, Gorbacheva, all of them were juniors at the time that this quad began. They were, yes, they were on the Junior Grand Prix, but they weren't mainstream on the Grand Prix. They weren't in, you're not going to get a visit with Putin for winning a junior world championship. You know, they weren't Olympians. They weren't stars at the time. And a Terry is very smart and a very adept woman at knowing how to get her athletes in the right position at the right time. And she knew that going to see Putin and having her athletes go to see Putin would have been just devastating for their chances of being approved at the Olympics. And Petrosian never went. Granted, she wasn't one of their A-list athletes at the time, but she knew how to get them to stay neutral, to lie low, to be approved when you have the polar opposite of the dance teams and pairs teams that have been around for forever and are very much indoctrinated in this Russian society of we're the best, we're the baddest, we're the biggest. And they have, unfortunately, or not really unfortunately, but for their sake, unfortunately, never understood that there would be repercussions for their actions. And that's kind of where I feel that this whole selection kind of process has lied. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a tricky dance because while she has not attended a Putin rally or a Terry, I mean, and none of her skaters have attended like a rally, you still can't bite the hand that feeds you. Like we all still have to remember that, like,
of course,
and they've never spoken out.
They've never spoken out. They've never done anything shady in terms of their relationship to the Russian government, because as everyone should know, Russia funds their athletes and all their sports, all like the government itself. That's different than any other country that I'm aware of in the world. So she has to play this it's a tightrope act of like, okay, let me kind of skirt past this event, but I'm still gonna keep my mouth shut and do what I'm told in that sense. And there's also another funny loophole. Obviously everyone is kind of questioning about how does Adelia Petrosian make it if Ateria was associated with doping, but she's still her coach. How does she get the cut? Or how does she not get the cut?
I think this is a
So
really
you think this is something we talked about?
We talked about, and we kind of we're like, wait. Yes, obviously, we think of the Valieva situation. She was a 15-year-old girl. Obviously, she herself, we've had this conversation. She was not getting those drugs. Clearly, she was a product of her coaching team. However, Valieva was the person who was banned for doping. All of the blame was put onto her. She was the one that has the suspension because of doping. Terry doesn't have it. Nobody on Terry's team has it. No, the doctors, Dudikoff, any of them, they aren't held liable or responsible. So technically, Valieva isn't part of Petrosian's coaching team.
Yes.
If she was,
we asked someone about how this would have gone. If Petrosian had paid Valieva to be on her coaching staff or paid her for something in terms of being on her support team,
just affiliation.
If you are sharing the ice with someone that is an alleged doper, that is not a case for suspension. It is direct aid or support through a monetary value. That's kind of how Petrosian is able to skirt this, because you can't ban someone for sharing the ice for someone that was
Mhm.
doping at the time where she might have not even known, you
Yeah.
know? So that is
Yeah.
kind of how Petrosian skirts around being associated through doping, because Terry herself was not banned. She was reprimanded by Thomas Bach in a statement, but there was no disciplinary action applied.
Which is a shame, which is really, really sad.
Yes.
Totally. And that's not to say
That's
that
not to say we
Petrosian
Right.
isn't in the exact same position that Valieva was in.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that goes into a conversation we'll have later. But like, that's not to say that, again, like the exact same circumstances aren't happening exactly to her right now. But again, like there is nothing like legally that like
that you can
she's
see.
that you can
Yeah.
see that like she has any direct association with somebody who's currently under a doping violation. So like luckily for her sake, she gets by and she gets to qualify to go to, I mean, we call it the Beijing Nebelhorn, but or the
I'm
the
calling it
Chinese
Beijing
the
Nebelhorn.
Chinese Nebelhorn, like
I don't know
it's
what the
actually
name of
called.
it is, but
Let us know.
everyone
We
has
don't know.
everyone on Twitter has like 6 different names for this event. It's like Olympic qualifier, Beijing Olympic qualifier, Beijing Nebelhorn, Chinese Nebelhorn, Nebelhorn in China and Beijing. Like it's so weird. But so also there was I know there was some photos circulating of Peter, the controversy of his selection. I don't really know where the photo that was posted originated from, and I'm not sure of the context of the photo. I've seen people say that it was him supporting war. I've seen him saying there was a military service that he had to attend or something that was prior to the war. Like I don't know.
It's a photo of him with a gun,
It's a
essentially.
photo of
what
him
it
with a
is.
gun.
But without context,
There's
like
a
it's
lot of context missing.
yeah, and so like it's not like he has Z or the Z like on, from our knowledge. It's not like he was at a rally when that picture was taken. So I think also like,
And just to be clear to everyone that's watching, it's not we're not supporting these athletes by
absolutely
saying
not.
that like there's no reason, like if with the evidence saying that like they should, like we're like they should be approved. We're just giving you what we believe is the reason why they were approved. Saying
Based
like
on the rules put
based on
out
the
by the
rules and the
ASU.
criteria
Yeah.
and the context. Um and I know, Clayton, you said you had wanted kind of to discuss the decision of Peter over Vladislav.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
that has also been a little bit debated on the timelines.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people really wanted to see the DG versus Adelia quad axle off. I personally really wanted to see it. And again, disclaimer, like me wanting to enjoy the sport is not me saying like I am supporting
Yeah.
XYZ Russian skater, just for the record. But I think that it would have been, who wouldn't have wanted to seen that? Like that would have made for
And
such a good event.
yeah.
And just media, like
Media
coverage,
coverage.
having that direct comparison, like
Mhm.
any sort of viewership to the sport,
Yeah.
like to an extent is good for the sport, like
Mhm.
obviously within reason. But getting, like that media, like, oh, the quad god, like can somebody, defend,
someone
like
match
beat him,
Mhm.
right? Like he's undefeated
Mhm.
right now. Like obviously there's so many other factors to take in, like with that, but
Mhm.
it would
And
create a good headline.
you have to think about Russia's kind of mantra in skating, where they're
Mhm.
always focused on like the big element, the one who's
Mhm.
pushing the sport. Like for the women, it's who's doing the quad lutz, who's doing the quad flip. This is their first skater that has ever landed a quad axel,
Mhm.
and they're not sending him. And I understand that Peter definitely has more of a reputation internationally because he was able to go out on international competitions.
As a
Um,
junior.
yeah,
I
as a
think,
junior and in one
yeah.
year as a senior too. But
Okay. Yeah.
it definitely does contrast what I think Russian skating has kind of become known for now.
Well, maybe they realized that because if they sent DKG, that would have made him that much more harder for the Federation and DKG himself to remain neutral in a situation where he's getting so much media coverage, maybe press. I don't know if that's like, I'm just throwing things out there. But on the other hand, Gumanek, he does have more of a performance value and quality, I think, to his skating from what I've seen recently, which I think PCS is going to be really, really important at this selection event, which we'll get into, I think. But I think I think he's more consistent. But DKG is also the reigning Russian national champion, and so is Adelia, and she was listed as #1. So I think that it's interesting for sure that choice, and I agree with you that it does kind of differ from their branding and like they're kind of like the delusion we're talking about earlier with like how they feel like they're the best.
I think he's more of a balanced skater, and I think that would really that's what really helped him. But now I really want to talk a little bit about Rosada. I feel so there was an interview that said that they will be testing their athletes prior to being sent to Chinese Nebelhorn, Beijing Nebelhorn, whatever you want to call it. So Alexa, what have you thought of this? Because remember, the Valyeva situation, they were unable to test their athletes, and that is the whole reason why this Olympic scandal in Beijing occurred, because they were unable to test their athletes. Let me tell you, if Russia was able to test Valyeva's sample, Rusada was able to test Valyeva's sample,
Olympic champion.
It
should be the Olympic champion.
It would have never happened. Nothing would have ever happened. But
they had to send it to another lab because obviously their history and that like they're no longer held liable to be able to test their own athletes. Like I think we all know the Icarus, like we've all watched everything.
We've read the books, Rodchenkov's book.
And listen, I just think it like what I was saying earlier about with Petrosian, again, yes, she's considered a neutral athlete, but she is in the exact same environment that Valyeva was in. We have seen this precedent and this history of building up these girls, and I'm saying girls very specifically, from a very young age, and they are given medication to improve their training so that they're able to train for a longer period of time. They're given medication like heart medication and things like this so that like, again, they can sustain more hours, so that they can put in more work, so that they can train longer programs. That again, it's all like that. What's so interesting is like they're saying that Rusada's testing or they'll be drug tested prior to Beijing. Have these athletes been drug tested the past 3 years?
Like, question for the hour.
Right? Like, do we know if these athletes have been clean for the past entire Olympic cycle? Like, would WADA have been even testing this? Like, genuinely, I don't know. I'm very curious.
I don't think so, because
if they weren't eligible
right?
Because they weren't competing internationally.
And it would a waste of resources.
Right, and money. You're spending money on like a competition that, I mean, it matters to them. It's domestic, but like in the international scene, like what do you have to prove besides?
I think so. The big thing that I take away, there's a lot to talk about here, but the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this is, will they be tested throughout the summer and throughout the fall in between Nebelhorn? But now, because when are they considered an international athlete? Is it when they take the ice in China, or is it starting now?
Or is it now?
Because you could say, well, Rusada said they'll be testing them before. So who knows?
Rusada says a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So it gets in this whole question of, do you start testing these athletes now and treating them the same? Because Olympic athlete, Alyssa Liu, Luna Hendricks, like Kimi Rapon, Lucas Britschke, everyone that's an international athlete, they have to write down where they are from a specific time period throughout the day. And they're in the same boat as Petrosian, where they're going to be at the Olympics together. So wouldn't it make sense that they also have to make go through the same compliance as an international athlete. And who would be testing them? Because
yeah.
can RUSADA test them at this point?
Honestly, all great questions. I would hope so, but again, like you can't you can't trust it. I also think that here's the thing. So much like Petrosian isn't gonna get like a quad axle in the next like few months leading up to the Olympics. This is all of this like alleged. Let's say that there has been doping occurring from this point. The damage has already been done.
The reservoirs are built.
Like that's the thing, is like all of that extra amount of training that they're able to put in, the extra strength they're able to accumulate, recovery to all of these things, like these have already been built from, you know, the moment that they were probably recognized as being an outstanding athlete and being put to a Terry's camp. So I do think at this point, like again, the whole reason with like Valieva is like, I'm sure the dosage was just a little bit off, and that's why it was detected and caught. And so, you know, if they're working with they're right, like by the time and when they know that these if WADA is coming, or you know, if they're being tested, they're gonna know to get that out of their system, or to time it in a manner so that it's not going to be detected. So I do think that it's a shame. Because again, like, can you ever actually truly be neutral? Can you actually truly be clean? Yeah, like I would love to know where WADA is on this. I would love to know, have they been tested the past 3 years? What does that look like? I think we all kind of know what the answer is, but
I think the timing gets tricky when this is something to consider just in general. The individual athletes, the neutral ones, they don't get a textbook team with them, you know, and they don't have a federation representing them. So if Petrosian goes, she is the one who is supposed to be getting all of the information, all of the event details. This is when your practice rank starts, or your practice session starts. This is when we have the draw. This is when we have all the specific things that normally a larger team or the federation helps coordinate and plan, like even hotels and all that stuff. Like, she is supposed to, I read this on Sports Review from Maya Bagriansova, that she is supposed to handle all that on her own, and then has to get a coach that's approved. I think they could bring one coach with them. Don't quote me on that part. You're right. But so if she is supposed to be responsible for like the timing of like when she gets tested, like she has to show up and know that like this is the timing. And I think that's going to be a really big shift just for any of Russian athlete in general who is used to having the federation and there's a large coaching staff kind of guiding them through all this process.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that's probably how it's supposed to be done.
I do think they'll still help her.
I still think that like again, this is also still like a 17-year-old girl. Like when you're 17, like you still have like your parents, your coaching staff, whatever, still like you're not booking the travel flights. It's right again, all
this
alleged,
is alleged,
right?
yeah.
But like to think that all of this is solely relying on her, I think is like, yes, maybe that is what it's supposed to be, but is that actually what's happening? Like
in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, okay. So we had our reactions to this. Russia did have their reactions too. Well, we need to take one for our notes. We're not going to talk about it.
Well,
Lekurnik did say,
we're surprised. We are expected to be let in within all the disciplines. Well, of course, those are your expectations. It's what's always happened.
And then we had the voice of reason, which was Moscovina, stated she was calm, and I had said earlier that they discussed the outcomes to Misha and Galliamov. She's always the voice of reason. I feel like her and Mishin are very worldly.
They have their finger on the pulse. They weren't
Yeah.
born yesterday, and
They weren't.
Yeah.
And it just comes back to, listen, I will say, like, I don't think they're perfect, but I think they do have a grasp of how the world perceives them
Mm-hmm.
and their country. And they explain that to their athletes. And I think some of these younger individuals involved in the sport in Russia don't quite grasp the reality of the situation because they've been so internal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But someone who, yes, you no,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go.
No, I wasn't gonna say
Okay.
anything.
But I was gonna say someone who also is supposed to be worldly and understanding of the, Western world, other countries too. Tarasova,
Mhm.
she kind of just gives like a wild quote here and there. And like, I don't really know. And like, she was kind of on her deathbed like a couple years ago. And
She's
like, I don't know
revived.
how much of a quote, like, I don't know how much of these quotes I'm taking with like 100%, like this was from her, but she said it was an unfair and dishonest decision that these people, that we hate their country.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, well, we'll get to this next part, but I don't think that people are waking up every day and saying that they want to see Russia like I don't think that that's occurring. I don't
No.
I don't think that what happened was unfair and dishonest because they followed the criteria. And if they're following the criteria, then hating the country wouldn't be a part of it because it was an objective decision. And that would make it a subjective decision if they took into the consideration of hating one's country. So technically the decision, you don't know if they hate your country, but it was an objective investigation. So there was no formal opinions or formal feelings brought into it.
Right.
I think honestly, if there were feelings brought into it, like I'm thinking of like the Ukrainian athletes and the Ukrainian Federation and how they're feeling right now and how they've been feeling for the past 3 years. And like if they wake up every morning and don't know if they're going to make it to the end of the day. So like it's just
That's
like
more important.
which is much more important. Like people don't wake up and think, oh, like F you, like, well, they think F you Russia because of what's going on, but they're not like, oh, well, they hate skating because, and they hate our skaters because like we're better than you and we're a threat to you. That's not the discourse that's happening. I also just think it's very like, again, we've talked about this, but like the athletes specifically in dance and pairs that they chose, there were other teams that they could have put forward that could have been considered more neutral and could have actually had a chance of going to the games or qualifying for the games, but they chose to put forward teams that have had associations being pro-war and being pro-Putin. And again, just like showed their own ignorance of, well, our athletes, they're the best and we're going to go and we've never been told no. So we're going to put them forward and like, they've been told no for once. So like, I'm sure that maybe is a little bit like surprising
Jarring.
to them.
It's like,
oh, if it's not the consequences of your own actions,
Yeah,
like,
truly.
wow.
Like,
it's kind of like telling a toddler no, or like taking the cookie from the mouse,
Yeah.
like, and then, oh, sorry. But she also said, so this is another thing that I want to talk about. This is a big this has been brought up in the news, but since there are no pairs in dance, that she would not participate in the Olympic Games. And Russian gymnastics did
Yeah.
boycott in 24 because some of their athletes were banned over others. I don't see the singles athletes not
No.
participating though.
Terry's gonna take that opportunity while she can.
Totally. Like I think, yeah, like what Tarasov said, like just because like not everybody could go, like Russia should completely boycott this completely, and like if not everybody can go, then no one should go. again, I know that was the case with like gymnastics, and I know that like there was the conversation there about like they're not sending the whole team. I do think there's like a bit more to that, but like I also think that even if you look at timing with like gymnastics in 2024, they would have only had 2 years to kind of like figure out like who's actually neutral. I know there was like a Russian gymnast who's like running for office under like Putin's regime. So like trying to actually find athletes who are truly neutral within a 2 year period, which probably was only been 1 year if you take into consideration like qualification processes, versus now we like having 3 years. So like skating could like look at it of like, okay, how much more time they can actually see how things play out, of like making these athletes more neutral, actually seeing what their opportunities are to being able to be sent to the Olympics. I don't think that's going to be the case, because let's be real, Russia wants to grasp what they can. And we'll talk about this, but about like athletes truly being neutral. This is an opportunity for Russia to be on the world stage, to be dominant in figure skating. And even though they are neutral, you know that like the whole country is going to be supporting them and everything
Yes.
like that.
And they'll
So
be the first to claim, like let's say
They'll be the first to go back.
mhm,
let's say Petrosian wins, knock on wood, and they'll be like, okay, that's our
that's our
fourth title?
athlete.
That's our fourth title in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when they do go back, and let's say they visit Putin,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a slap in the face to the IOC and ISU.
Mm-hmm.
Of
Mm-hmm.
you picked an athlete, you said that was neutral, and they went back and showed their roots.
Yeah.
So
It even like, we haven't touched on this, but even like, and I don't know, but even just like the funding, obviously, again, like sports in Russia is state sponsored. So you could even think like, is an athlete ever truly neutral? Because someone like Petrosian, who was very successful as a junior and is a part of a Terry's camp, she would have been getting the state sponsored
for forever.
sponsorship since she was kind of recognized, I'm assuming, as like a star and as a potential like star athlete. So like, is that athlete paying back all the money to the government that they've been given their entire life? And are they truly neutral? And are they paying for this all by themselves? Are they self-funding their Olympic journey? Are they paying for their coaching?
Yeah.
The answer
Right?
is
Like,
no.
The answer is no.
And
so
to be
yeah.
and like to play like not devil's advocate, but like it's not just Russia that's the case.
No.
Like even though that we talked about this over text a little bit, even though so the US government does not pay for their athletes, but the media is such an the American media specifically is such an entity that like we can generate, and like the money that exists there and the publicity that exists there, that kind of supersedes any sort of government funding or publicity that like we could do. Like if Donald Trump made a post about Amber Glenn, like that would not do as much traction as like, like the Olympic Channel or like whatever, like people who actually care
Or
about
her getting like a brand sponsorship.
Right.
Right? Like,
And that's more money, honestly.
totally.
That's more money with the brand sponsorship. So if people know where you're coming from and you have this establishment, whether it be a government body or a corporate body, like you have ties and you have association, and there's money being invested in you by someone else.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
I think
hard.
this goes to kind of wrapping up the discussion of Russia. They do plan to challenge. They did release a statement. I did not watch the Stepanova Bukin and Mishina Galliamov. I actually don't know if Mishina and Galliamov were in it.
I think it was just Stefano and Buchan, their Instagram plea to the
I honestly
ICU.
didn't. I didn't watch it, but I did see that it was a thing. So they do plan on challenging the decision denying their neutral status, and that'll be done through CAS. So, okay, one thing to note: this needs to be expedited if they think they have any shot in hell of being able to get this challenged and approved, because CAS takes forever. Remember how long the Galliamov case went? Like
years.
Years. They have legitimately 2 months to do this. you got to think they want this probably wrapped up by August because Chinese Olympic qualifier is in September. You'll want to know probably by August so you can get geared up for that competition. You know, like it just, I don't know how this will pan out. They did say in the ISU article that this was a final decision. There could be no subject to no change. I have to think that they had incriminating evidence that showed that they were not neutral. And if it doesn't follow the criteria that the ISU put out, then I don't know what they can really argue to overturn that decision.
Yeah, they seemed pretty clear in their statement that they put out. I know they're going through CAS. I think they said that they're having like a Swiss lawyer, which I guess would be
Well, that's
CAS
the same as
in,
Valyeva.
yeah, because I believe that CAS is in Switzerland.
It
is
is.
not?
Yes.
It's like IOC, their headquarters.
I think
is
it's
also
in
there.
Lausanne.
Yeah,
it might
it's
be in
I think because that's
Lausanne.
where the IOC headquarters is too. So I would assume it's all within. But I think honestly, because like the ISU put out a pretty, like they're saying it's a final statement. I think also if you look at the leadership that's in place, like they seem pretty set in stone. It would be actually like very heartbreaking if they did overturn it. I think it would just kind of show like the influence that Russia still has and like just the leeway for things. I hope they stick to their guns and I hope that it stays like the way that it is.
Yeah. Kind of the final news point that we have. I'm trying to think. Well, okay. The one thing I think we could talk about actually before we talk about Veronika Zhilina is kind of the idea of where these skaters would fit in, because I know Zhilina is kind of her own entity and own story. And this kind of still sticks within what we've kind of been chatting about, but so these skaters, you only really have two skaters really to worry about. If we're being honest, like the Belarusian skaters, not going to be a big factor.
It's also like a matter of like, will they qualify past the qualifying event? Because there are only, I believe it's 5 spots in singles. And then 3 spots in pairs and dance, correct?
Yeah, I do think their woman will qualify. I do believe that their woman will qualify.
I could see it, totally.
I don't know about the men.
And I think dance is going to be really tight.
Well, they don't have it. No Russian dance.
No, but Belarus. Belarus has a full team being sent.
I mean, they're not going to make the dance.
No. I think dance again is going to be tough. But yeah, I think that like, again, it'll be interesting to see. But like, I think if we're assuming that like both Russian skaters qualify at Nebelhorn, which I think we all agree that
they will,
barring like anything crazy,
catastrophe.
I think they will. I do think it's going to be so interesting. I think that competition will be so telling to look at scoring, to look at who the judges are on that panel, because if and when they qualify for the Olympics, they're in the first group. They're in the first
skater,
group,
likely. And
probably first skater, because they won't have any like ISU standing points. They won't have any sort of like, any momentum going into the season. It's going to be like their first
that'll be
first big
really
competition.
Fun to watch though. Like, imagine them posting, like, let's say they post a big score and just watching one by one who can beat it. Like after, I think that'd be really fun to watch. But
totally.
Sorry,
but I think it's going to be so interesting to see who's on the panel, because PCS and GOE is going to be a huge factor.
Very big factor.
Yeah, and I think that like with Petrosian, now remind me, does she have a triple axel?
She does.
It is probably the sketchiest thing you've ever
seen
in your life. Like
just
worse than Valyeva's.
It's worse. So she does the arm in front like Valyeva, but like it's not.
It's like almost here. Like in front.
And she also like lands on the wrong edge, kind of comes doesn't follow even like a curve arc. Sorry.
She is nowhere near what Valyeva was in any capacity. Nowhere near.
Valyeva was special. Like doping aside, special skater. But I think that if we're just looking, because you can't do quads in the short program, if you're looking at Petrosian's maximum, say she does like even does a triple axel and skates clean, like
I don't think she'll break
I don't think
80 just because of how
I don't think
early.
she's
She
breaking
shouldn't.
70. I
If
don't
she hits
I
the triple axel, I think
I
she'll
think
hit 70.
the Geo, like, I mean, if they give her, I don't know, they
If
shouldn't.
they're
She
giving her
shouldn't.
like zeros and like
They sh-
sixes, maybe not, but
that's why I
I
think
get. She'll
the
she'll at
panel.
least get sevens. She'll at least get sevens. I think she'll get eights.
I
Quite
think she'll get
honestly.
sevens at least. They're not
I
going to
don't.
give her a 5, Alexa.
Well, you have to
Well,
think
no,
this is
but
wait, this has to be a Terry's magnum opus. This has to be the best program she has ever conceived in her entire life. Like,
Yes.
it's going to be good. I don't choreography, like whatever. The concept will be good. It has to be good, or
Mhm.
else it's not gonna fly. Like, I
it
think it's
has
gonna
to
be
be a
good.
story and it has to stand out, and I'm sure it will.
She is a
Um,
fiery girl. Let me tell you,
yeah,
Petrosian, she has some persona, like personality. Like she's
And let
not
me
a bad
remind.
watch on the
No,
ice.
she performs. She has a lot. I think that's helps her case over Gorbachova. I think Gorbachova has much better jump technique, much more speed coverage over ice coverage over the ice. But I think that Petrosian is the better performer. You have to remember that Eteri also, she's the one who choreographed Adios Nonino for Aliona Kosternaya, and that was
that was a
a
good program.
It was a
bomb
great program.
program.
Really
So
good
That
I
was
program.
think
also like 8 years ago,
It's
she
true.
can pull it
and
out. She'll pull it out.
she
She needs to get
could.
rid of. We do not need to see Daniel Gleichengaus at all for this little season segment of whatever happens. Like, he does
Yeah.
not need to touch a thing.
Well, also they've kind of been. I've watched vaguely. I haven't been as invested as I was back in the day, but they all have very much taken on a very home-centric, a little bit of a Homer type of program and music style. So I do think this will be a bit of a change for her because last year they did give her some two programs that I think were more open to different types of cultures. And a lot of the skaters that were in Russia were it was very focused and fixated on Russian audiences. So
Mhm.
she will kind of need to do something, I think, that is open to all types of culture to appeal
She
all
did.
different
She
types of
did
judges.
Josue Maria in
Yes,
this
and I
past
think
Mhm.
that
season. I mean,
was
and it
a
worked.
step, that was a calculated and planned move to get her to have a different style, and kind of get used to skating to something that is a little bit different from the environment that she's in.
Do you think that obviously like they are symbols of propaganda, unfortunately, do you think that either of their programs could have like some sort of Russian tie? Like, do
I
you think
do.
that
Do you think she's gonna bring out the black hood?
oh my god.
She'll borrow
Well,
Camille's.
the paired girl did, remember?
Yeah, she did.
That's
The
right,
Georgian
like
girl.
like
I kind of liked
do
her.
you
Sorry.
I'm not saying that the paired girl was in support of
no,
Russian
but
propaganda,
like
but she did have a hood.
she did have a hood.
She
So
worked it. She worked it.
But like I just wonder because again, like nothing can be like outwardly said, but like how can you prove that like by doing this movement or like maybe it's not specifically Russian music, but you know what I mean? Like I wonder how it will be interwoven into like how they are and like how they're presenting themselves and
I think
everything.
it'll be like I think it'll be tongue in cheek. It'll be
Yeah.
like unstoppable. See, like or like
I
can't
don't know
catch.
if she's gonna skate to
No, that
Unstoppable by
or
Sia.
like we're like can't catch me now, like by Olivia
There'll be a message.
Rodrigo.
There will be a
There'll be some
message.
sort of like yeah, there'll be a message, but I don't think it'll be like a Russian song or anything.
Yeah, we'll see. Um, our final news of the day. Okay. So this also came out I think this came out the same day
It
or
was
maybe the day
yes,
after
yes, around the same
that
timeline.
um the Russian news came out. Veronika Zhilina, her request to switch to Azerbaijan was denied by the Russian Figure Skating Federation. Anton Sigurlitse, who is the president of Russian Federation, basically said that she that she was someone major switching, and she's still a member of the Russian national team, and they don't understand why she's switching, and they're waiting for her to perform. I did hear that she had taken a spot on their reserve national team, so she technically is still a member, but I also think that Russia just sees her as a threat to
Mhm.
Petrosian, and they will not approve. Why would they approve her if she has a legitimate chance? Because she has a chance to actually build momentum
Right.
Mhm.
and become a name
And to
before
compete
the
throughout the
Olympics
season. Yeah.
Right.
and
If
beat Petrosian.
yeah, I think you're exactly right. If her consistency is a problem, but if she like locked in and got maybe more of a program with a story and some substance, she would be unstoppable. Her jumps are phenomenal. Like she has great technique. They're big. She has the triple axel. She has two quad sal, quad toe. She's tried. I
Okay,
think she's tried quad lutz. I think she would be. She'd be scared. Why does she not like lock in and try for
so
the Russia?
well, she can't because they've
Yeah,
already
because they didn't
selected
choose
who they.
because but she hasn't been
She
competing the
hasn't
last
I'm
few
saying,
competed
I
in
guess, I'm
seasons.
saying in like, I'm
years.
saying like in hindsight. I
Mhm.
mean,
But she was injured. Like she basically
Injured
hasn't been
and
competing for 2
inconsistent.
years.
mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
But then like she came out after they had said like we're not releasing you. And then she came out the
Mm,
next day and she's like, I have my Azerbaijani passport.
Like, let me go.
okay.
Yeah. And
And
like that was one of the reasons why I think the Russian Fed had said like that was one of the reasons not, but she's like, I've got my passport. Like I haven't been competing for 2 years. Like, let me go essentially.
I think people also need to remember this girl was a hot mess of a skater when she was performing. This girl would come and like do like 3 quads in one program, and then the next program, she would fall on like a single axle or like do a program of like all doubles. Like she was a hot mess. And I do think she does have the potential to do well, but I don't even think Russia wants to even entertain the idea or the thought of it even potentially happening.
They need consistency because they need somebody that's going to be in that like second to last or final group and be able to make a statement. They can't like risk
Mhm.
somebody like obviously she's not going, but like they couldn't have risked anybody like not even potentially making it past a qualifying event.
Yeah. Well,
So wait, I
okay.
forgot to mention this at the start of the episode.
Okay.
So in the ISU statement, when they released, they had like their little press that release and saying like these are the Russian athletes that are or the individual athletes. There was something in the very first paragraph that I feel like a lot of skating Twitter kind of glossed over. Now there is no validity to any of this, but they did say that Eric Radford is stepping down as the athlete commissioner, the chair of the athlete commission. Now, it is the Olympic season. What happened the last Olympic season when there were 2 spots for Canada and the pairs event? How funny. Listen, don't go crazy on me, okay? This is me just like starting shit. How funny would it be if Eric Radford came back during an Olympic season as one of the pairs teams?
I mean, it's
I'm
not
just
beyond the
saying.
realm of possibility. And then that
Listen,
once that Russian server was like, "Oh, there's another announcement that we still have to find out about,"
Which we're
and
praying that it's Suyan Han, but
we
it
are.
has to
We
be.
are. But I'm just saying, wouldn't that be the funniest thing ever?
It would be funny.
It would be hilarious. Poor Trent. But
I
like,
mean, 2018, people from the 2018 Olympics seem to be coming back in spurts. So, I
listen, half that
mean,
dance podium's back.
Bronze
So
medalist, yeah.
bronze
yeah, the
medalist.
bronze medalist's
That's what it
back with
is.
vengeance.
I
So
mean, Deanna's like 41. So, isn't Eric like 55? Like, who cares? 55's the new 20.
honestly,
Come back.
Deanna
yeah.
splits with Max and then skates with Eric.
Oh my
No,
god.
so I'm not sorry, I don't need to manifest that or like put that in the universe.
No,
That'd
no,
be really
no.
evil. No.
I'm just saying this season is going to be so entertaining. Like I'm actually like I wish it was September right now, honestly, even August.
Yes.
Oh
Because
my
I'm like, I
gosh.
want to know what these programs are. Like, listen, Cowrie was in Montreal this week.
Yeah, she was.
So I don't know if
Going
your
back to our favorite girl.
Benoit like manifestation's happening here.
It's not it.
But like I want this Olympic season. I want to see the programs. I want to see how
Mhm.
things start to play out. Like I'm excited.
I am too. I think there's going to be a plethora of news for us to chat about
Mhm.
and for us to engage with and experience together. And I just cannot wait to talk about it with you guys.
Good.
So, as we look forward to the future, we'll see you guys soon. Thank you for joining us today. Again, I didn't say this earlier, but like, subscribe, and comment below. I always forget to do that at the beginning. Russia's back, baby. So, game on. We'll talk
Bye,
to you guys later.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye all.